NFL free agency begins on Monday with the tampering period, and then deals become official on Wednesday. So next week is going to be a really busy week on the San Francisco 49ers report. And as part of the free agency period here, I put together my perfect free agency plan for the San Francisco 49ers to allow them to not just get to the Super Bowl in New Orleans next February, but to win the damn thing and complete that quest for 6. Free agency plan. Step number 1, got to fortify the offensive line. The good thing going into the offseason for San Francisco is this. It's a pretty solid free agency class for offensive linemen, and it's a pretty solid draft class if you need interior offensive linemen, but also tackles. And there are a lot of top offensive lineman free agents that I want to run through here. And all are different varieties and prototypes. Some of them scheme fits better than others. Mike Onwenu, he plays guard, plays tackle for the New England Patriots. Last year played mostly left tackle. He played very well. I think he's better as a guard. That's where I think he could become a star. Robert Hunt, Miami Dolphins. He can play guard or offensive tackle, a former second-round pick who played very well in an injury-shortened season under Mike McDaniel last year. Mike McDaniel obviously leads to a scheme fit. Graham Glasgow, he's in his early 30s, a little bit older, but has long been a very solid and formidable offensive guard. Played well this past year, in my opinion, for the Detroit Lions. Tyron Smith, just a great left tackle for a really long time. I think he's going to go to a team like Kansas City that could use him at right tackle. He's going to look for a little bit of a bag. Dallas not willing to pay him. A little bit of an injury history, and he's getting a little bit older. Niner fans know Trent Brown. He actually started his career with San Francisco, became a Pro Bowl level player with the Raiders, and was a trusted piece by Bill Belichick. You put him at right tackle, that's a massive upgrade, as are a lot of these offensive tackles on this list, over Colton McKivitz. If you want to take a chance on a player like Mekhi Becton, he was drafted in the first round out of Louisville a few years ago, and he was drafted based on his physical traits. He's had some really special and quality moments in the NFL, but they've been overshadowed by a lot of dubious moments. He's still a young player who has potential. If the Niners think they can get him right, that could be an option. Jonah Williams asked for a trade about a year ago. That was not granted once the Bengals signed Orlando Brown. I think his best days are behind him, and frankly, I don't think he's very good. The Chiefs might decide to sign a player like Tyron Smith if they move on from Donovan Smith. Jermaine Oluminor has played guard and tackle. We spent a couple of minutes with him on Super Bowl Radio Row. I like the positional versatility, but I'm not sure how drastically better he is as compared to McKivitz. And then George Fant, a solid swing tackle who I think is better as a backup, who you can depend on if your starting tackle gets benched or your starting tackle gets injured. That's a player that I wouldn't hate for depth. I would not like him as a starter. Really, two of my favorite players are Mike Onwenu and Robert Hunt. Mike Onwenu moves really well for his size. He can get out in space on those pull blocks. He packs a punch. Overall Pro Football Focus grade this past year of 71.5. Only gave up 3 sacks, 2 hits, 18 hurries, and 4 penalties. I think he's rounding into his own. What's of note, the Patriots never really committed to him as a tackle. That's why I think he's probably better as a guard. And then Robert Hunt. His PFF numbers were actually better than Onwenu, but he only played 10 games. Overall grade of 77.1, only gave up 1 sack, 1 hit, 3 hurries, and 2 penalties. When you play in a system like Mike McDaniel's, you have to get out on the run. Mekhi Becton, this would fulfill tackle here. It would be a risk. Maybe the Niners sign him to a short-term deal, hoping that they can get him right. But the numbers last year, not good at all. Overall Pro Football Focus grade, 53.2. He gave up 12 sacks, 8 hits, 30 hurries, and 18 penalties. For whatever reason, now he did play for the New York Jets. They are a dumpster fire of an organization. He just wasn't able to find any consistency. But he's 24 years old. He's 6'7", 360 pounds. He was drafted 11th overall in the 2020 draft out of Louisville. So he's certainly an interesting option there. And San Francisco looking ahead, they have multiple viable options. This is also a really good offensive line class in the NFL draft, as I noted a little bit earlier. So if you want to go draft instead of free agency, you can do that. If you want to go with a little bit of a hybrid approach and you want to bring in some offensive linemen in free agency as well as in the NFL draft, you can go that route. Either way, San Francisco has to take prioritizing the offensive line a lot more serious. I'll tell you this, free agency is going to get underway on Monday, and we are going to have you covered right here on the San Francisco 49ers Report, the largest independently run Niners channel that covers this team every day. Hit that sub button if you haven't already done so. Step number 2, sign a perfect fit at edge rusher opposite of Nick Bosa, and you bring in a player who's not going to break the bank, who's still young, who I still think can improve because I think he has untapped potential. That's Bryce Huff of the New York Jets. He's only 25 years old. The physical body, it's a good one. 6'3", 255 pounds. I like his story too. He's had to earn everything that he's gotten. Undrafted free agent out of Memphis in 2020, and the scheme familiarity is there because he played under Robert Saleh with the New York Jets. His Pro Football Focus numbers, very, very good. It's rare to find a player with a pass rush grade this high of 86.8. So he's looked at as a little bit of an analytical darling. The Niners have taken chances on players like this, and it's paid off. An overall grade of 79.7, run defense grade of 48, 67 pressures. That's a lot. One more than Chase Young, who was just elite at generating pressures last year. The other numbers for Chase Young, not great. And then 45 hurries. And then some of the sack numbers. 10 sacks this past year. He had 21 quarterback hits. He's not a player that's going to jump up for pass breakups or anything. But 10 TFLs, so he made some plays behind the line of scrimmage against the run, even though his run grade wasn't all that good. He did make those TFLs and had those 29 tackles. And this is the path that I'm speaking of, where Bryce Huff this past year rounded into form. He was a UDFA for a reason because he was wiry, a little bit smaller, but has a variety of skills to his game that's allowed him to go from 2 sacks, 3.5 up to 10. It's a little bit of a risk because he has one solid year of production, but again, I'm not sure that he's going to break the bank, and that fits what the Niners could want. Another option here at edge rusher, if you want to go older, more accomplished player, and I'm interested to see what Danielle Hunter's market is going to be if he leaves Minnesota, it is Danielle Hunter, who this past year was one of the best defensive ends in the game. He had 83 tackles, he notched 23 TFLs, 16.5 sacks with 4 forced fumbles. So a big play maker, and he also had those 22 quarterback hits. That's a player, you don't have him longevity-wise long-term, but that's a move if you're trying to go all in to win a Super Bowl in 2024, which obviously fits the Niners' timeline here. Step number 4, got to extend Brandon Aiyuk, and that does have to do with NFL free agency. The Niners, in my opinion, have to figure out what they want to do with Brandon Aiyuk, especially going into the draft. If they think that he's too pricey, they can draft his replacement at the end of April. And they're going to be able to see what the wide receiver market is going into free agency. And it's just best to get this deal done once free agency gets underway. Don't let a stalemate ensue. Don't let bad blood linger like you've done before. And don't make everybody wait until July or August for a contract extension to get done. Just get it done and worry about the rest later. And why Aiyuk should be paid, he's earned it. He's an emerging and ascending player. He's still only 25 years old. I still think he has better football left in him, especially if he gets more targets. The Niners drafted him in 2020 envisioning that by the time the 2023 season came around, let's say, he'd develop into a wide receiver 1. He did. That's why he was a second-team All-Pro. He's such a complete player with his ability to impact the game from goal line to goal line. And he's also so good as a run blocker. And he's really the epitome of what the Niners look for in players. They love player development. They love grooming guys and taking care of their own homegrown players. But they also love guys who don't shy away from physicality, who will pancake you, who will talk some shit, bring some swagger, confidence, and toughness to the table. Aiyuk checks all those boxes. And when I talk about him being an ascending player, just look at how incrementally the numbers have improved, increased, and they've gotten better every single year. To be a rookie during that COVID offseason and to have 748 yards and 5 touchdowns, that's impressive in 12 games. And then the following year it goes up to 826, 2022 surpasses 1,000 yards, and then this past year, just glorious. Top 10 wide receiver in the game, 1,300 plus yards, 75 grabs, and he's been a really good touchdown machine too. And some of his in-depth numbers, sometimes you look at just the overall stat sheet and you look at other wide receivers who might have more production, but some of the analytics here, yards per catch, number 2, yards per target, number 2, Pro Football Focus wide receiver grade, number 2, behind Tyreek Hill. Hill, the cheetah, was fantastic. EPA, expected points added. It's like the war version for football almost. Number 2, and then receiving yards. Number 7. So in this offense that had all these other players with more than 1,000 all-purpose yards, Christian McCaffrey, he had 2K. George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings in the mix. His targets were down compared to other number 1 wide receivers, yet he's 7th in the league in receiving yards. That's very impressive. And then to round things out, coming in at number 4, San Francisco addresses corner with another player who I don't think is going to break the bank and get a crazy bag to the point where the Niners can't afford him, but they signed Kenny Moore, formerly of the Indianapolis Colts, hopefully. L'Jarius Sneed got franchise tagged. So too did Jalen Johnson of the Chicago Bears, who the Niners, there were some rumblings, were said to have some interest in. He's a terrific player. Kenny Moore is kind of that next tier among these free agent corners. And he's a really, really quality corner who isn't going to cost San Francisco so much money where they're not able to afford him. And he's had pretty steady production over the last few years. And San Francisco looks at a player like this and they're like, you know what? Consistent production, consistent availability. This is a player who we think can be a high-end impact type of player. Gave up a completion rate of 79%, 4 touchdowns, 6 pass breakups, 3 picks, quarterback rating of 98.3. Those numbers might not like jump off the screen at you, but he's a team captain, good instincts, maybe a little bit smaller, but he could give you inside-outside versatility, and then you decide what to do with Deomodore Lenoir. But these are pretty steady numbers here for Kenny Moore, and what I like about him, he'll put his hat on the ball carrier. This is a box corner who could play against the run. 8 TFLs, 4 TFLs, 6 TFLs, and 4 in consecutive seasons. And the interception numbers have been really solid, too. In 2021, we're talking about a guy who had 102 tackles. So he can really mix it up and bring that level of toughness to this defense and really give you something at that cornerback position. So that's my perfect free agency plan for San Francisco. We round out with asking you what you think as far as which free agent you want the Niners to sign. Drop me a name or names down below. It's your chance to be the general manager and to run football ops for the Niners.